All right, everybody. Good morning. Brent Jeffries, Vice President, Field Operations with Bierer Meters, safety trainer and speaker as well. Today, we've got a really cool, awesome Electric Culture of Safety. It's going to be 008, Mr. Jimmy Duncan, and he's going to be talking about interpersonal communication. So this is going to be a good opportunity to get to learn and get to use and participate in proper communication, and that way you're a lot safer, obviously, out there in the field. So that's important, communication, and he'll go over that. Real quick, we're going to talk about ECOS announcement. We got Mr. Billy Martin coming in October the 4th, and that's at 8 a.m. He's going to talk about practice primes proficiency, tactical safety. He took care of us when he came in and talked about 004, flip the safety dynamic. He's coming back. What's really cool about Electric Culture of Safety, ECOS, is all the speakers thus far, every single one of them, all 6 that have participated. We got the recordings of the episodes, and they all are wanting to come back to do this, giving freely back, safety. So if you don't have 004, flip the safety dynamic, it's a must-have. All right, we've got Mr. Derek Sang with Bulwark coming in. He's going to talk about some FR and AR, or what is it, arc flash safety with some fire resistant and arc flash protective clothing. He's going to talk about that, and that's going to be the proper selection, use, care, and maintenance of FR, AR clothing. All right, great guy. If you haven't heard him speak, you need to participate in that, and that's October the 5th at 9 a.m. All right. So Mr. Jimmy Duncan, he's a Marine, United States Marine, and he's a former EMT, and he was former with the Red Cross on disaster, leading the team to the disasters and through the disasters. So he's got a lot of experience. He has 27 years of safety training, coaching in the electrical utility. So he's going to come with a lot of experience for you all today. And again, he's Kiowa contractors. He's coming here and he's giving back. So it's an amazing time that we can be together with him. I met him personally last October at the Incident Prevention Conference in Orlando in April, and he agreed to do this. I believe he agreed to do this about February when Danny Rains came on board for 002. And he agreed to it, and he didn't really know kind of what he was agreeing to, and he kind of thought maybe it's a scam or something. So when I saw him face to face and he came to realize that he agreed to something that's actually real. That's what this ECOS is about. This is real safety. We have over 4,100 members now around the United States, some Canada and some in international lands as well. And this is after 6 months, folks, after 6 months. And it's just amazing, the expertise, the folks giving back, the folks sharing their passion and their love for the electrical utility industry going across this nation. And we're just sharing, and this is not a scam at all. We do not charge nothing. We pay for it. Sponsors pay for it. The folks that are coming from particular companies, they're paying for it. No money changes hands at all, and you get the benefit at no cost. All right, and then we want you to share it with your folks and your contacts throughout the industry. And you can see how to register. All you got to do is text Bierer, capitalized letters, 22828. Very simple. Company emails only accepted. Once you register, bing, bada bing, you get the whole thing. Okay? So without further ado, I got my good buddy here, Mr. Jimmy Duncan.
Good morning. I hope everyone's doing well today. Before I get on with the presentation, what I'd like to do is thank Brent, Ryan, Bierer Meters, the OSHA 10-hour, 20-hour, the ET&D partnership program, and also Caterpillar, allowing me to use their material today and hopefully imparting with you some great information. And you'll see my session is going to be more about using the KISS theory. Keep it simple, silly. So having said that, I'd just like to talk about the whole meaning of why we're here, ECOS. I look at the fact that they're here giving back. They're not charging money like Brent has said. They're out there for one purpose. Billy Martin, Danny Rains, Jim Vaughn, Dave McPeak, Rod Courtney, all these folks that have been here prior to me are here for one basic reason, and that is to make sure that everybody goes home in one piece. I think I'm lucky enough to be working with a great outfit right now, Kiewit Construction, doing the power utility deliveries, and with Kiewit, coincidentally, their motto is nobody gets hurt. So, if you think about this whole process, the presenters, the conferences, the safety meetings that we have, it's all for one reason, and that's to make sure that everybody goes home in one piece. So I think with that information, being a better presenter or being a good presenter is really believing in what we're here for. As a former Marine, like Brent had alluded to, unfortunately back in those days, they were, allegedly the cause of something that I went through back in 2017. And it kind of relates to what we're doing here today, hopefully changing the things that are going on out in the field. I ended up coming down with cancer, and I'll tell you, for 3 years, it was come and go. Didn't know if I was going to make it. And then now that I'm here, thanks to, the medicine that we have today, I'm able to present and hopefully allow every one of us, all the women and men out there in the work field, to go home in one piece. Having gone through, an ordeal like that makes you really think about some of the things that our brothers and sisters go through when they get hurt out in the field. The fact of being incapacitated, not being able to do the things that you were doing prior, and as sometimes, being that man, you think you're the provider. I know it was kind of a sexist statement, but I was not at the capacity that I should have been or that I could have been, and it kind of made me feel less of a person. So that's what's given me, I think the excitement of coming out here and hopefully imparting with you what I think is going to be a great class. And again, I'm just grateful for this opportunity. So having said that, what I'd like to do is get on with the PowerPoint. Again, I give accreditation to the ET&D partnership and also Caterpillar, who've come up with some great programs, the Safety Leadership in Action, and also the Listen Up, Speak Up, which is what my class is going to be about today. So here, the first part is the effective communication. What we're going to learn are the barriers or the basics of communication and the effect of the safety outcomes, how it affects it, barriers to effective communication, and some of the things that I'm going to push on, like I had talked about the KISS theory, keep it simple, silly. So when we're out there talking, I think Billy Martin alluded to it, is the connectivity. And being able to ask input is a huge thing that we have out in the field. However, if we're not getting the input, it's not working the way we want it to. To be able to give input, you need to feel confident, you need to feel empowered, you need to have the authority to feel that you can say things, you can bring things up without being berated, without someone treating you in a condescending way, because when that happens, we're afraid to say things. And that's when you do an accident investigation, you'll see the contributing factors is I saw what was going on, but I didn't feel comfortable speaking about it. So asking for input, some of the things that we have to think about as the sender, when you're thinking as an individual that's going to be giving a message or delivering a message, you're probably not thinking the best way to deliver it. You want to get your point across as quickly as possible. So as the sender, they're thinking about formulating the message. And in formulating the message, there's a lot of things that could go into that. How is that individual feeling today? Did they have a good morning? Is the job behind? There's a lot of extenuating circumstances that could make this message formulated in probably not the best way. And then when it's delivered, probably not as good as it could be. You also have to think about the receiver when they interpret that message. How are they thinking? What's going through their mind right now? What's going on in their life, which may have a different meaning when they receive or interpret that message, what was being actually delivered. They formulate the feedback. Then they deliver it back, and they give it to now the person who was originally the sender, now is the receiver. So as you can see, there are a lot of things going on here that could screw up communication. Types of communication. How many types of communication are there? There's verbal and there's nonverbal, right? So, Brent, if you could read that for me, what does this sentence say at the bottom? Right here.
Let's make sure there are no unsafe behaviors on the job today.
Now, the way that Brent said it, it wasn't abrasive. It was calm, cool, and collective. However, if we put a facial gesture to it, now that same saying is in a different monotone, correct? Now you're looking at the way this individual is presenting that delivery message. Has a total different meaning to it. This one right here has another different meaning to it. So as you can see, when you're giving those facial presentations or those facial gestures, your message can totally change. One of the things that someone had said to me years ago was, Jim, just say 7 words. Say, she stole the money. Sally, say that she stole the money. That one sentence can have 7 different meanings to it, depending on how the inflection is on any one of those words. So we have to remember that when we're delivering, okay? Some of the barriers of the impact that we have, how they can impact our message. All these items right here, there are many different things that could go on that does not get that message across the proper way. One of the good things that we have in this industry is called 3-way communication. I think a lot of you have learned that before. So 3-way, the sender delivers the message, the receiver takes it, formulates it, gives it back, and then it comes back one more time just to make sure that what we stated, what we want done, is not misinterpreted. Some other barriers that we have, we've got the triangulation. This is more, I think it's easier that if we look at it this way, there are many different ways that we have to communicate using the telephones, computers, but when you're doing via, using the text messaging or the computers, you don't have that emphasis behind it. You don't have a meaning behind it. It's just a plain Jane message. So it can be construed depending on how you're feeling at that moment, could be construed in a different manner, which would eventually lead to something that's unfortunate, which is what we're trying to make sure that we avoid. Here in this triangulation, what it's talking about is that the individual 1 had an altercation with individual 2. It was so bad that individual 2 went and told 3 and 4, and it just got worse and worse. And by the time he got back to the foreman, it was a lot more, how would you say, I'm thinking a lot more abrasive. It was a lot worse than what it really was at the beginning. So what I'm trying to say is that if you have a problem, if you have a question, the best thing to do is make sure that you ask the individual that you want the information from. Talk to the receiver directly. Here we have other barriers to communication, the jargon, the slang. So here we ask this question here, we make the statement, you need to get 1.5 tons, the pig's here, the bull grip, out of the truck so we can pull down that guy. If you bring someone on new, an apprentice, if you even bring somebody from the West Coast to the East Coast or vice versa, this statement right here could have so many different meanings, or it could be just the fact that, hey, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then you go in the vehicle, you do this task, and you might be doing the wrong thing, bringing the wrong stuff, and it can be very important. The other thing, relative terms that we have, we start off the job in a few hours. We'll start the job in a few hours. We'll just have a bit to go at this site, and then we're several miles away. Again, interpretation. The person receiving that might not know. I can tell you, in life that I've gone through, my mom being Mexican, and my father used to say when she went to the grocery store, she'd be back in a Mexican minute, and she would eventually come back like 2 or 3 hours later. I mean, it was just a joke back in these days, but here, it could be something detrimental to the job site. The other part, we have you met the new safety director? Seems to to be a know-it-all. Again, depending on how you say it, the inflection of the certain words could be something that a totally different meaning than, hey, you know what, the safety guy is a good guy, the safety director does know a lot, and he can be used, you know, and be beneficial to the team. Here are some of how the barriers can affect the safety. If you look at the top, we're talking about the culture. And I'd just like to talk about a culture a little bit more, just because of the fact that having a safety culture means not just, you know, talking about safety, checking off the boxes, doing some of the things that we think we need to do to say that we're a safety cultured group. You really have to, you know, look back at some of the things that I had said prior in those slides. When you talk to somebody, you have to make sure that you're treating them the way that they should be treated. I know I've talked to a lot of people out in the field, and they're saying, well, that's called like coddling, you know, not treating them like they should be, because the industry that we're in is so dangerous that people could be killed. But if I ask Ryan, you know, if I start yelling at Ryan, we'll talk about, you know, the situation that I went through yesterday, going to the hotel and checking in. And the demeanor of the clerk was, you know, abrasive, argumentative, and it kind of put my mind in a different view of what I thought of the place I was at. So we think about the people that are out in the field. If you go and you are condescending, if you're berating, the person's mind is not where you want it to be. There's a task out there. Again, the work that you guys do, it's very dangerous. So if you're not thinking properly, like Billy Martin said, you're not connected to the job, you're not connected to the task, you're not connected to the people, it's not going to be very good for the site. The culture, it's all about the beliefs, the values that we have, and again, treating people the way they should be treated. If you have a bad culture, you're going to create the norms that are not good. One of the things that we use is normalization of deviation. And that means in a you know, quickly, it's like if you're going down the road and the speed limit's 65, you decide I'm going to go 67 because I know it's all right, the cops aren't out here, it's normal now, you've deviated from the law. Then you start going 68, 69, and 70. Or if you're out in the field, you start going up, you know, you're not using we'll say the Bierer meters out there to make sure that there's no power out there. We check to make sure that it's de-energized. We start taking shortcuts, which I'll tell you a story that I remember about the shortcuts. You know, it was back in Orlando, the keynote speaker, I believe it was a pilot, and he was talking about on these single engine airplanes or the one propeller airplanes, you've got to turn that propeller 12 times before you get going, because it'll still start, but yet when you're flying out there, it can stop. Wherever, you know, the mechanics of it. And there was one time he was out there with his brother and they were in a hurry, and he ended up telling his brother to skip that part about turning the propeller. So his brother looked at him in that, you know, apprehensive facial gesture, and his brother said, just get in. So they left, they made it safely. Not too long after that, this individual wasn't able to make this flight show, had his brother and his best friend do it, you know, take the airplane, fly over to where they were going, and then all of a sudden he heard later on, you know, a couple hours later, that there was a crash, that his brother and his best friend had perished in that crash. Now, come after the investigation, found out that the propeller wasn't turned. So he set the example, that normal thing, you know, it wasn't normal at the time, but they knew they could make it. So we have to look at being the presenters, or not the presenters, but the GFs or the foremen out there. You're leading by example, especially to the new folk. And if you start taking shortcuts, they think they can do it too. And it just precipitates from there, it goes on. And that's why we have the unfortunate incidents. We have the attitudes, beliefs, and ideas. If you believe, you know, if you can just change your beliefs to 1% of your belief to the fact that everybody can go home. I know working with an organization before that said, you know, 0 tolerance, 0 accidents for incidents or injuries. And I had a hard time grasping that because of the fact that the field that you guys are working in, that you guys do every single day, it's extremely dangerous, where people you think in reality will get hurt. And I kind of had that problem, and I finally went up to that individual that had told me that, and I'm like, this is unrealistic. the work that we do, something is going to happen. He goes, I understand that it's unrealistic, but if we can get people to believe in the fact that they can go home in one piece, it's going to be a lot better than what we have now, and it'll just precipitate that as well. And I look at, even with the company I'm working with now, one of the vice presidents had said, when you go out to the field, you should just ask, what's out there that can kill me today? What's out there that can hurt me today? And we need to think about that a lot more and have that in our beliefs and our values, and then that'll build that culture. The ideas, think about when you go out into the field, think about the task that you're doing right now, that you can do it safely and you can get home in one piece. But going back to where if we have that bad culture, and if you're not feeling good, if you're upset about your leaders that are out there, the people that are presenting and delivering improperly, your beliefs, your values, and your ideas are going to be changed. And I use that as a safety professional. When I go out in the field and I see something that can be improved, I don't go out there and I don't start yelling and screaming and hollering, because I'll push these folks away and they won't come to me with things. And then they'll also be thinking their mindset is different. Like, God, that safety guy is, someone I despise, and, how is he going to write me up today? So we're not thinking the way we should be. The at-risk behaviors. Another thing, if you look at, say you have a foreman, GF, or superintendent, or even going way to the top, individuals that push, and they don't really care about you as a human being. They care about making the money, making the dollar for the company, making themselves look good. They'll push us. So what we want to do is to make sure that we get the job done. If we have to take a shortcut, so we're not going to get screamed at, hollered at, we're going to take that shortcut. And that's usually when situations will happen. I'll just say the action and give you the definition of an action. Someone told me years ago, it's a sequence of events that leads to an unfortunate outcome. And if we can just look at one event and pull it out, we can avoid these accidents from happening. That'll go to the at-risk behavior. Think about it. Take a safety break. We talk about authority to stop work, or the responsibility to stop work. Take 15 seconds, take 20 seconds. And I know it's difficult when you're out there. I used to do physical labor too, and I would take the shortcuts. But now, getting a little bit older, shortcuts usually end up in that accident, and it takes a lot longer to heal. So take the 5 seconds, 15 seconds to think about it. Talk with your group. How can we do this safer? Hey, you know what? I just got to move this piece of equipment. It'll work. I'm telling you, and I ask you, we can make a difference. We can make a change, and we can make sure that our folks go home in one piece every day. As I said, the incident. If we can get this culture, if we can get the norms, the attitudes, the beliefs, the at-risk behavior, and the incident will disappear. I said at the beginning of this presentation that I was using the KISS theory. Having groups, the safety seminars, the safety presentations, the Billy Martins, the Dave McPeaks, the Jimmy Vaughns, these are outstanding people. But we already know communication is the basic principle. If we can just refresh our memories on that, if we can just get better on how we treat people, I promise to you, we'll make sure that a lot more folks don't get hurt. All right, this module will be the communication styles. We'll talk about it a little bit, but I just want to digress for a second. This course here, Safety, Leadership, and Action, it's a wonderful course. It's an outstanding course. If there were two courses I could give, have our company do, would be the leadership, the Safety, Leadership, and Action, and also the Listen Up, Speak Up program. Two of the best programs that are out there, and it's all about the basics. We don't have to learn about physics. We don't have to learn about geometry. It's just talking about communication. Again, we've been doing this since we were 3 years old, 4 years old, being able to communicate effectively. It's a huge thing. And again, it's simple. We just need to use it properly. So here, this session, or the agenda, what we're going to be teaching today is how different communication styles will affect the safety outcome, identifying and modifying personal communication for style of maximum effectiveness. Again, we'll go to the fact of being able to speak properly to people, being able to use that right monotone. The delivery is a big thing. I know that was one of the things that I've had to learn, you know, especially coming out of the Marine Corps, the way that you would talk to people is not the proper way, and now I'm a little bit more diplomatic and eloquent. I try. But this here is, again, just easy. We just need to work at it, guys and girls. The communication and the safety, you know, we have different types of leadership styles. You have the authoritative, the delegative, and participative. A question to ask yourself, what type are you? You know, if you look at the authoritative, there are times to use authoritative leadership. We'll just say in case of an emergency, in case of a fire, in case somebody goes down, we need to be authoritative and we need to make those decisions quick. Delegative, you know, this is more when you start using other people in your organization. You delegate, making them feel part of the group. And you can use that with your crews out there, you know, as a leadman, as a foreman, as a general foreman. Delegation, making people feel part of the company or making people feel part of the group. That brotherhood, it'll go a long way. And then, of course, you have that participative. You know, you get people to participate. And here I'll talk a little bit about participation when you're doing the tailboards in the morning, the job briefings. If you're participative in there, you can read that morning tailboard or the JSA, but I think it has to be participative when you're out there. And that also is another module of this safety, leadership, and action. But when you're going through the tailboard, you want to make sure that you're looking at the crew that's out there, making sure they don't have that deer look in the headlight. Ask them questions. You know, we'll say, for instance, we go over our tailboard here, and we've got Skylar and Jeremy and Ryan, and I'll ask them questions about what I talked about. What was I just mentioning? Do they know what they're doing? Do they understand what's going on? Because there are so many times people are afraid. If you don't have that right communication style, people are going to be afraid to say anything. But the funny thing is, you can be that individual that's not afraid. You speak up, you ask the question, and it'll be funny because 5 other people had that same question. Having that questioning attitude, you know, could prevent somebody from getting killed. Here are some of the other things that we have to talk about. The facial expressions we saw at the beginning. Facial expressions on how your face is when you make that gesture or that statement or that comment. The body movement, the posture, we have to understand too. You know, and I know that sometimes when you're speaking to people, if you get too close to them, they're getting a little defensive. Like, hey, you know what? Give me an arm's length at least. Your body position. If you slouched over, I remember my father said years ago, you know, your picture, your body gesture, your movements can speak 1,000 words, and it can. The eye contact, having eye contact out there with the people. I think, you know, when I do presentations, which is a lot easier when you have a live audience, you can have that eye contact to make sure that people know that you're being genuine, that you're being honest, and you're being sincere. The hand gestures, sometimes I use my hands a little bit too much. You know, so I think that if I tie my hands up, I might not be able to speak, so thank God we didn't do that today. Touching. There are a lot of people who touch. You know, they put your hand on your shoulder. Say, hey, you know what? Brent, you did a great job today, and you pat them on the back. Got to remember, though, remember your audience. Some people don't like that. Personal space, we had talked about that. And then the voice. I had said, you know, the fact of, I never said she stole the money. The voice inflection on I, you know, will change that whole sentence around. So when you use your voice, make sure you use it properly. And I understand the field that you guys are in, that, you know, it's tough work, and sometimes you have, some people just raise their voice, period. But you learn people that way, and you know that, hey, I know when Ryan was using his big outside voice, that's just his normal voice, and I wasn't intimidated by it, or I didn't take it wrong, what he was saying to me. Modifying your communication styles. You have different folks out there, different people that are in your groups. You have the doers, and you have to know how to speak to them. And I think that makes a good leader, a good communicator. If you know the group that you're with, and some people say, dude, I can't take time to handle people differently. I need to get my message across to everybody. But I think if we learn each other, if we understand each other, those individuals that are the doers, they'll understand what you're doing, what you're talking about. There are many different ways to handle these people. You got to share your vision. And I think when it comes to safety and to communication, you've got to be that individual that goes out there and is genuine. I think that's made me successful, being genuine and sincere. I know a lot of folks that I've worked with in the past that I still consider friends today. And I'll, if I was superstitious, I'd knock on wood right now, but I've never, ever had to do an incident investigation on a fatality. Very rarely have I had incidents on my site, and I'm not saying it's because of me, but I think it's when you treat people with that sincerity and you're empathetic and you're a real human being, it's going to go a lot longer. So here again, thank them for consistency, and that's one of the things that I've used in the Listen Up, Speak Up. I think that one of the things that we do all too often, we're taught to, to have that negative response when someone does something bad. What you want to do is, I think, if you work on their positive, if you work on the positivity, if you work on, hey, great job today. If you keep on giving the people the kudos, if you keep on showing them that they're doing a good job and thanking them, they're going to eventually work on some of their shortcomings. So much better, guys. So much better that we work it that way. And again, I don't want to sound fluffy or anything like that, but if we just try it, I swear it's going to make an extraordinary difference. Here also, when they talk about, I alluded to the Speak Up, Listen Up program, you need to go up to people. I'd say, like Jeremy, I saw you driving the other day and you didn't have your seatbelt on. Great team member. You do a lot of great work for us. You get paid well. I just want to make sure that you don't get hurt, that you don't get killed, that you do go home. And then ask them to put on that seatbelt. And then you got to follow up. Make sure that you follow up. And that's one thing we'll stress a little bit. Follow-up's a huge thing. If you want different results to task, you need to take actions. And this action about asking to put your seatbelts on from now on. And then you follow up with that. Say, hey, you know what? I came out here to see how you're doing. I noticed you put your seatbelt on. And then we, expound on that. Great job. And I think that's going to go a long way. Follow-up is a big thing because so often we're out there and we make these decisions and we talk about these items, but we don't follow up and things don't change, and we'll use that definition of insanity, continually doing the same thing and expecting different results. Not going to happen. So go out there and do the follow-up. Make sure that what you've asked to be done is being done. And another short story on the follow-up. I'm a huge proponent of follow-up. I worked for a company many years ago, and I was the safety director for them. And I set up a meeting with all the, executives and the staff, and for a meeting 3 weeks in advance because I wanted to discuss what my expectations were and what theirs were. Long story short, 3 weeks went by. I went to the meeting, and I was the only one there. I was a little bit perplexed, but I'm thinking new company. This is probably what happens. And it wasn't but a half hour later, the HR manager came up and said, the owner wants to see you. And he lived on the second floor. And whenever you go up there, it's usually because you've either won $1 million in profit or you're going to get fired. And I know I didn't make $1 million. So I was a bit nervous when I went up there. And I went up to this individual, and I'm telling you, when I walked into his room, his office was just huge. And he happened to be on the other side. There was like 3 TVs, 3 desks. And we walked up there. If you know the movie Mufasa or The Lion King, Mufasa, the way that he stood there, like he was all that high and mighty. He was the number one, the king of the jungle. And this is how this individual presented himself to me. And I was a bit nervous. The individual looked up at me, and then he looked at the HR manager, and he goes, you know what, Tommy? I'd like you to tell Mr. Duncan, if he wasn't so big, I'd take him outside and whoop him. I'm thinking there's a joke here. The HR manager looked at me and said, Joe wanted me to tell you that if you weren't so big, he'd take you outside and whoop you. And I'm thinking there's a joke going on here, waiting for the punchline. And then the owner of the company said again, he goes, I want you to tell Mr. Duncan, if he wants to continue his employment at this facility, he needs to remember 3 things: follow up, follow up, follow up. And this is what the HR manager said to me, and then the owner said, I'm done, and I walked off. Kind of weird situation that I went through, but what's even more weird is the fact that I remember that. So hopefully that is something that you're going to take from this class, the follow up. Guys, you have to follow up. Make sure that what you said, what you asked for, is getting done and will continually get done. The 3-way communication, we did talk about that earlier. I think it's very important. You guys usually will only get one chance at what you do. Make sure you have that 3-way communication. So here, this session here is about sending and receiving a message. The agenda on this part will be benefits of effective communication or effective feedback, methods of giving feedback, and methods of receiving feedback. Effective feedback. What is it like when you got positive feedback? In a live audience here, what I would do would be asking those questions. How did you feel? The endorphins or the adrenaline, that great feeling that you got being congratulated on doing something well is a lot better than it was from some negative feedback. What effect does it have on the culture? Again, having that positive feedback, being excited of what you're doing and knowing that you're getting positive feedback, it just makes that whole feeling, makes the whole process go a lot better for everything. What is it like when you got negative feedback? Do you think about it? Negative feedback, unfortunately, you happen to be one of those individuals that if something negative goes on, that same feeling sits with you for the whole day, sits with you for the whole week. Something that we don't need, especially in the line of work that we do. What effect does it have on the culture? Think about it. If you get negative feedback, if something negative happens, if you get scolded, if you get punished for doing something, you'll take that feeling and you'll go back to your crew and you might disseminate that throughout the crew, making it even worse. Something we don't want to do, guys. I'm telling you, it's something we don't want to do. We want that connectivity. We want that relationship. I believe that one of the best brotherhoods that I ever went through was, of course, the Marine Corps. And I think that you linemen, all the people that are in this industry, have that brotherhood and that sisterhood of that connectivity. And it's so much better when everybody is part of that. Giving feedback. We talked a little bit about it on Speak Up, Listen Up. Here it's ask. Find out what they're doing. Find out, if they can share their concerns. Again, we talk about it on the tailboards. If you can do this kind of stuff, asking for feedback. But again, going back to the KISS theory, you're thinking about if you feel comfortable saying something. If you don't feel comfortable saying something, it's not going to be any good. Get a commitment. We want to make sure that we work together. We want to make sure that we get that commitment to work safe. We started something new with the company now that we're going out there and we ask these questions. What task are we doing today? What's the most dangerous thing that could happen? It's what we want to make sure that we get that culture going with all of our team members out in the field to say, hey, what am I doing today that could really hurt me or that could kill me or even my brother or sister that's out there? We want to do the follow-up. When I talked about the follow-up, we've got to make sure that we check that they are following through with what we had asked. Don't give up if they're not. Again, don't go out there and change that attitude or that delivery. Have a little more emphasis to it. But that emphasis, even though it might be a little at a different higher or a tougher monotone, the individual knows that you really care about them. There have been folks that I'll call, after even a couple years to say, hey, what's going on, or vice versa. I think that allowed me to make a difference in that person's life. I had one individual call me up and said, you know what, Jim? He goes, I need to thank you for saving my life. And I had done a confined space class for this guy maybe 10 years ago. And one of the things when they were going into the manholes, we talked about monitoring. And monitoring was something that wasn't utilized back then. And he said, I've been doing this for 20 years and never had a problem. But one time he had dropped the monitor in a confined space or a manhole that he was going in that was 15 feet deep. And when it hit the bottom, it was like 5% oxygen. So you can imagine what would have happened had he not done the monitoring, gone down there, would have been possibly a fatality. So he thanked me, and I feel that, Even though it's been 28 years of safety, I saved one person's life. I feel that I've done my job, and I want to continue doing it. Give positive feedback whenever you see that happening. Going out there, I've talked about this, the slides have showed it, and when they repeat something, it means that it's very important. Positive feedback. Again, it's just so much better when we have that positivity instead of that negativity that's out in the field. Encouraging and recognizing, models speaking up, seeing something that needs to be fixed. So we talk about, if you see something, say something. If you see that something that needs to be fixed, say it. You can't just clean it up, walk away because it'll get screwed up again and it might cause someone to get hurt. See something, say something. Encourage and reward. I'll tell you, with Kiewit now, the rewards that they're giving their team members out there, even though it costs money, I think at some job sites they were giving out Harleys, they were giving out Raptors. Just the rewards that they're giving people to do their own job, to do the job that they were hired to, and to do it safely, goes a long way. When you think about it, I'm going to say something, I'm going to bring something up, I'm going to have a good catch, I'm going to have something that I saw that could prevent someone from getting hurt, bring it up. A lot of people don't bring it up because they said, I'm just doing my job. But if you have that culture that's built that's saying, hey, we're not only going to pay you on Fridays, but we're also going to give you, have these rewards that are out there just to show that we really mean safety when we talk about it. Respond positively. Again, we've been talking about this time and time again, being more positive instead of negative. Receiving the feedback. When you listen, again, and I keep on saying again, we have to think about when you're listening to somebody, are you really listening? If you come up to me and I know that you're not very well liked or I don't like you and you're going to be talking to me, am I really listening to you or am I thinking of a comeback? Am I thinking, how am I going to respond or how am I going to retort to whatever you're saying? And it's not good. You're not listening to the message. And what we're asking, I think in communication, listening is huge. You need to sit there. And it's difficult because I still have that problem today. If you're coming at me, I'm thinking about what kind of negativity you're going to be spewing at me. I'm not listening to the message. And it's important. Take that break. Take that 5 seconds or that 2 seconds to deep breath it and say, I'm going to listen to what this person is really saying to me. Agree on a safer way. One of the huge things out there, human instinct is to resist, or human behavior is to resist changes. I know there are a lot of things out there that are different. Speaking on these seminars, and we're bringing up Heinrich Triangle, we're bringing up substitution or engineering, all these different things. A lot of us just want to say, absolutely no. We're going to do it the way we've been doing it, and this is how it's going to be. Again, step back, think about there might be different ways to do things. A wise guy told me years ago, the first idea may not always be the best idea, but you have to have a first idea to get to the best. Follow up with your commitment and change to make safer actions. Practice. The model, speaking up when someone comes up to you with feedback. How are you going to receive their message? How are you going to respond to them? Will dictate whether they're going to talk to you again. Do I really want to talk to this individual? Does he not really care? And I think I'm thinking what happens, a lot of times we'll see people walking down the hallway and we'll say, hey, Ryan, how was your weekend? And you go all of a sudden talking to somebody else before Ryan even responds to you. What would that say? It says that you don't really care, right? You're just saying it to say it. Not going to go a long way. Encourage and reward, we talked about that. And thank others for listening up. You can look at them and something small. You know what? The best thing about this whole process, this whole principle, it's free. It doesn't cost us anything. Go out there and say thank you. Hey, I really noticed that you did listen to me, that you were looking at me. We had that eye contact. We had good conversation. There was good listen up, speak up. Couple more slides to go through. Here it's about working unworkable situations. Listen. Instead of committing to a course of action immediately, make sure the other party knows what they fully understand the feedback is. Apply your skills in giving feedback to share your concerns about the suggestion and ask for permission and share your comments or your concerns. Keep the conversation respectful. Keep it flowing so you can agree on a safer course of action. What we need to do, work on this principle, work on this process, and change the outcome of every single day at work where our people go home in one piece and don't get hurt. All right, that seems to be the end of the slideshow. I'm hoping we got something out of there. Just a few things that I'd like to mention real quick. Again, it's something I really care about. Safety, it's been, a lot of pain and people that get hurt out there. You see these situations where people are getting hurt for no reason at all. We go to work to earn money, but we don't earn enough money where it's going to cost us our lives. So make sure that we improve on the communication, and then when you have these other professional speakers out there that can just enhance the communication, it's going to go so much further. And I'll tell you, I had to do the safety leadership in action over in California not too long ago, and the president of the company was there on Sundays. Every Sunday that we started, there was 3 Sundays in a row. He was there every day on Sunday, and that spoke volumes. So one of the things, the other thing that he had passed on to me, or the group, he said, in the United States, in the last 13 years, there hasn't been a fatal crash of any, commercial or airplane where customers fly since 2009. 13 years. Over 2 billion people have flown in the United States without a crash. If this culture that they have over there can be that way, why can't it be that way with the type of work that we do? Think about it, that nobody gets hurt, nobody gets killed. And sometimes we get upset at the process. You know all too well, such as I do, when we're traveling and you get on that airplane and you're going somewhere and it gets shut down because there was a fuse. San Jose, California, flying back, there was a fuse on the airplane that we had to stop on the runway, get it fixed. It ended up being a half hour. I then, of course, missed my connectors. Didn't get back to Maine till a day later. Really upset, but what I thought about is that this group of people said that it was important that we fix this issue, that we don't put that airplane to make it 85% likely to land. Think about it. If you're going to go on, select the airline to go, and if this airline said 85% chance of making it home safely, or 50%, how likely would it be to use those? So if they can do it, we can do it. And with that, I'd like to end my session. I appreciate everybody for coming. Thank you.